Hey, everybody. Welcome
All
to
right.
the Moving Forward podcast. This is your co-host, Corey Cottrell. We've got Rio on the line, and we got a special guest today. Kyle Payne is on here. He's going to be chatting with us. We should find out where Kyle is actually calling in from, because I don't know. We just had a fantastic conversation before coming on air about Bitcoin. That was fun. Rio is still in Germany. I'm going to definitely make him say the name of that town again, because that's how we do that. And we're going to get into this interview.
All right. Yeah. So I'm Kyle. I'm calling in from Portland. I was born in Iowa, but raised here in Portland, Oregon. So, I'm a part of the, I guess you would call it working class or working poor. I make $12,000 a year. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment with 5 other people and 4 dogs, actually. Kind of a problem. But anyways, I work at a doggy daycare. So my goal is, after automation hits, that's kind of one job that I don't think will automate first. So my goal is to open up one of my own, take care of other people's dogs. But to do that, you need land, you need other things. So that's kind of my short life story there. But I first came to hear about Yang through his Joe Rogan podcast, as I think a lot of people did. I listen to Joe Rogan often. I just love, I commute to work 2 hours each way. So Joe Rogan is kind of what I listen to. And when he was on there at first, the thought of giving away free money, I was like, what is this guy doing? This sounds so crazy. And so I was like, I got to listen to the rest of it. I'll decide later. And he kind of swayed me with the VAT tax, saying how it's, paid for right away. And I thought about it. My job is a service industry job. When people have money, they get their dogs groomed, they take them out to daycare. Right. So that would literally explode what my future job is. So that's kind of where I started really thinking about it,
Yeah, no, that kind of goes back into the local economy stuff that he talks about all the time. Go ahead, Rio.
Oh, yeah, sure. Hey, Kyle, how are you? So everybody, I know Kyle because he's a longtime member of the Conservatives for Andrew Yang group that I run on Facebook. And he's been a really smart, active member of it. So we decided to have him on the show. So Kyle, could you talk a little bit? You in our group, you were kind of mentioning, you were saying that it's kind of hard for some people on the left to understand why somebody who is working poor, as you described it, would support fiscally conservative policies. So where are you coming from on that, and how does that tie into your support for Yang?
So a lot of that, honestly, so I'm not as book smart as you guys are, definitely. So a lot of that is just how I grew up. I was born in Iowa, so 3rd generation pastor's kid. A lot of it came from the social side at first, and I definitely, as I went to college, have strained from the idea of like illegal weed or there's all the different social subjects that I probably changed my mind on, and now I look at it more from a fiscal perspective. And it's definitely, the idea of working for your money, not taking what other people have earned. The idea of fairness, but not in outcome, but in like the game. So like those are the core ideas that I hold, and I don't see that in the left. I see the idea of I want everyone equal, and even if that means we have to take from the really rich to make that happen. So that's kind of, and maybe that's a little crass, but that's kind of what I see.
Well, that's awesome because I've been kind of defending those values on the show, and Corey's been pushing back on them a little bit, but Yang is our taco, hashtag Yang is our taco. So
yeah.
More guns.
More finger guns.
Andrew Yang is our taco. Oh my God, that's good.
But no, I think what you're describing is really noble, and I think that it actually gets to the heart, Kyle, of what Yang's trying to do, because his idea is he wants to help people like you achieve the American dream that you're working very hard to achieve and that you deserve to achieve. He doesn't want to keep you trapped on the government dole. He doesn't want you trapped by welfare cliffs and things like that, which even Corey acknowledges now is a real thing.
Yeah.
He wants to, he basically, would, from what you described, it sounds like he would more or less double your income. and but not in a way that would prevent you from working. It's not means tested. They're not going to say, oh, well, you're working, therefore you only get this and not that. You just, and you don't have to go through, you don't have to sign up in some line where someone as noble as yourself would be ashamed to do. You just get it, but you don't have to feel bad about it because I'm getting it, Corey's getting it, Barack Obama is getting it, Elon Musk is getting it, getting it because we're Americans and we're shareholders in this economy. And that can just it would make it so much easier for you to you're working hard and you're saving money and you can stack it away and buy a rural property outside Portland. It's beautiful up there.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, let's get Yang elected and help you achieve that vision, brother.
And
yeah, that's what's crazy to me is that it would literally improve my life tenfold, a UBI. And just that's the one policy, right? So it's like, I don't think there's been any politician that's offered something like that for us, the working class. The welfare thing, so I went in for food stamps when I first moved into this apartment, and I get $15 of food stamps, that's $12,000 a month because I have no dependents. I'm working 42 hours a week. So it's just, I don't understand how, I can, cause I literally, there's nights where I don't eat, right? So it's crazy to me, that welfare doesn't help someone like me, cause that seems like who it's there for, right? So that's where the UBI is it really does help.
Yeah, I got to chime in and agree. I mean, I think the and I think people like Elizabeth Warren, there are some people on the left now that are sort of trying to speak to the working poor, but not enough, and not unilaterally, not universally. All of Elizabeth Warren's ideas are good. They're all piecemeal, right? So it again, like Andrew Yang, right off the bat, imagining that, understanding what you want. I've got 2 dogs. They're literally right over there. I got, 2 giant dogs and they love going to doggy daycare. So knowing that, if you're making $12,000 a year now, you could start that day one, right? Day one, Kyle's freaking, I would drive to Portland just to let you take care of my dogs for a couple of days. Cause that literally start that right off the bat. That'd be really, really
come down to wife and my dogs when we're in Germany next time too.
There you go. Yep.
Kyle, why do you think it is that a lot of people on the left, and obviously Yang has to win a Democratic primary, so why do you think it is? I mean, considering the fact that his policies would be so good for someone like you, why do you think it is that so many people in the Democratic primary are resistant to Yang's policies so far?
So I honestly think it's because he's pro-capitalism. I think he makes it very clear that he doesn't want to end capitalism. And I think that there's an extreme section of the left that's very vocal, that's very anti-capitalism. Whether that's, they have reason to be or not, I do think that's the way it is. And so I think that they're being very vocal against him.
And why is it that you yourself are pro-capitalism? Why would that be?
Well, so even in my situation, I recognize that I'm in one of the greatest countries in the world, I believe. And I think a lot of that is because of capitalism. I think that it really does raise the lower class up, because I've been to Africa, I built wells there, been to Haiti after the earthquake. So I've seen horrible living conditions, and we're nowhere near that. And so that's where I think that capitalism really does work.
Yeah, Corey and I touched on that a little bit, and we acknowledge that what we have now, our current capitalist system, really has taken us beyond a kind of the feudalism that we had in the Middle Ages. It really did make it. I mean, the middle class didn't exist before capitalism, frankly. Ideas of Adam Smith really made that possible. I can understand why you would want to have a floor. We all believe in having a floor. That's why we support Yang. I mean, I know people who are anarcho-capitalists who you might say are to the right of me, and they're like, no, we don't need no floor. The floor is called starving on the streets. We don't want that. I don't support that either. I think what's great about Yang is he does have the potential as a person because of his demeanor and character, but also as his policies, even beyond him. If he doesn't win, I hope whichever party, as far as I'm concerned, embraces his platform is going to be the one I'm going to be supporting going forward. If that's the Democratic Party, then I'll be a Democrat.
Well, yeah, I actually I registered as a Democrat to vote for him in Oregon, which I thought I would never do. So
Awesome.
there's that.
Yeah, I second that as the local Democratic representative. And I've seen some of the like I talk to Ree about this all the time, like that I get really, really worried about you like throwing the terms capitalist and socialist around the way that we do, because that's what the problem is on the left, right? The people that have they hung out at Occupy Wall Street. The gripes about that are extremely accurate as far as I'm concerned. What happened in 2007 to 2009 is so dark. Most people don't even know how dark, really freaking dark. So I get that impulse, but most of them that are saying like, oh, we totally want socialism. What they're really saying is they just want Canadian healthcare. That's literally all they're saying.
The ones who are saying that, then they should be voting for Andrew Yang. Right?
100%, right? Or like, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you haven't talked to the ones I've talked to, Corey, but there are some actual communists out there. I've had
no, you're right. Yeah. So I wanted to mention.
I've had them literally tell me that they want capitalism to fail because they think that when everything burns down,
right,
we're all making babies on the ashes. That
oh my God,
we'll be able to rise out of it.
So yeah, I have seen, but again, like I've seen one person on one podcast kind of espouse that view. And really no one else, right? And I run
I think we can agree that if that's not what they're talking about, then they should stop using the words incorrectly.
Well, and this is the thing, right?
Taking them at their word.
Yeah, well, like now, anytime. So they one of the guys at the Democratic convention was talking about Medicare for all being a crappy idea, and of course he got booed to within an inch of his life. It was fantastic.
That Delaney or Hickenlooper?
Both, actually. It happened to both of them. And he said you can't have any socialism, and they're like, well, obviously they're still booing him, right? So socialism in that context, again, we're just talking about creating a floor. That's it, right? So yeah, but I have seen a couple of people that are like, no, capitalism has to die. And I'm like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. And again, like in a hyper technological society where UBI is at 100%, I mean, okay, if you have a box in your house that can literally print you anything you want, maybe like full Star Trek economy, but.
Hey, Kyle, were you going to say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, so in Portland, we're very, very lefty, very liberal. And I see it a lot. I mean, probably one in three conversations I have are either, vote in this Democrat, Bernie Sanders, or anarchy. They are so headstrong about Bernie Sanders and the idea of democratic socialism just for the key word of socialism, because they're done with capitalism. Like they don't even know what the two words really mean.
Agreed.
They're just, so it's really hard to conversate with someone like that. And so that's where I get so frustrated. I'm like, I'm done with the left. I'm done with Democrats. And so that's where like I've been for a long time. And so when Andrew Yang kind of came out and was like, here's your taco, I was like, oh, okay, let's talk. Let's eat some tacos and talk. So that's a great analogy, and that's really what happened.
Latin Asian fusion.
Yeah.
Oh, well done. Here's your taco, Kyle. Dude, that's so awesome.
I think the Bernie Sanders thing is largely a cult of personality. I think there are a lot of people who are convinced that he screwed him, and they just kind of want like cosmic justice, and they're willing to burn the whole thing down over it.
I think that's part of it. I think that's part of where the energy is at that separates him from the rest of the people. But that's only because the rest of the people are copying his policies now. Right? Like Medicare for all in 2015, 2016
except Yang. Yang's got a lot.
I'm telling you right now, the difference between Andrew Yang's Medicare for all and Bernie Sanders' Medicare for all is just the fact that he basically said that insurance companies will have to stop providing a lot of the care for people because it'll be done through the government. It's semantics. They're identical, right? But then you add on the tribal layers and the fact that everyone wants to call themselves socialist. That's the problem. If you ask those socialists what policy they like, they're just going to say Medicare for all. They're not going to very few of them, I think, would understand that socialism means actually capturing all of the means of production and that we all, live off $10 a year. But again, I know there are exceptions to that. And again, Andrew Yang is our mother trucking taco, and we get to actually talk about policies. So maybe that's the difference, right? Andrew Yang came in and said, I'm not either one of these things, but here's all the policies that I have, without he managed to avoid threading that needle, avoiding being called, a lefty or whatever. Well, he calls himself a capitalist because he likes capitalism, but comes out with this idea that, reasonably people would call socialism, even though it's not. So yeah, Andrew Yang is our taco. That's it. Shows up.
Such a great meme.
It really is, dude.
I actually do think that their Medicare for All policies are pretty distinct. And Corey touched on it because of the fact that Yang's is a public option, and I think Sanders may have started with a public option maybe in 2016, but he definitely seems to have gotten a bit more actually socialist in the sense that the government takes over the entire medical industry basically under his new policy. So there is a difference.
Yeah, I think you might be right about that.
I agree with you, Corey, though, that is probably the area where Yang and Sanders have the most in common policy-wise. After that, they diverge pretty wildly.
I agree.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, the way I see it is like the difference is Yang wants to give money back to the American people and kind of trickle up economics where regular people rebuild economies through their own autonomous choices in the market. And Sanders wants to continue to create even more like Band-Aids and patchworks on top of our already very Band-Aid-y, patchworky nanny state,
yep.
Which is, in my opinion, would basically strangle the economy in the long term. So, I mean, where I'm coming from is like if the choice is between, Status Joe, as they call him, and Bernie Sanders, I'm afraid I'll have to go on the side of Status Joe. But
Status
I
Joe? Is that what they're calling Biden now?
Yeah, they're calling him Status Joe.
I'm stealing that. That is awesome.
but like obviously I'd prefer Yang because in a way Yang represents real progress.
Yeah.
Going back to our very first conversation Corey and I had, I don't really distinguish between conservative and progressive. I think that people should be both of those things. Actually, I think we should all want to consider what's good about society. And we should all want to progress in ways that, as long as it's preserving what's good, it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Who doesn't like progress? So like Yang's version of progress is that it's sober, it's sane, it preserves what's good about our system. It's not risky and dangerous. I mean, it's like the different. Bernie Sanders is like you're playing poker and you go all in on a bluff. That's pretty much what Bernie Sanders is. Yang is like, it's like the smart poker player who's like calculating the odds and doing the math. Make America think harder.
Make them work. Yeah, amen to that. Yeah, and again, in a vacuum, and we've talked about this on the show before, but in a vacuum, the $15 minimum wage and the jobs guarantee, I would be for that, right? Because it's better than doing nothing for the people that are kind of in that in those situations. But yeah, compared to the freedom dividend, there is no frickin' comparison in any way. Right, because like those things aren't necessarily going to help Kyle. Right, that's really what it boils down to. Like people that are either homeless. There's a lot of that around here, or that are just on the bubble that are having to worry about that kind of stuff. Why not do this thing that is not that big of a deal? The VAT tax is already being done in Europe. We can figure that out. It's only half that anyway, and we can actually change everybody's lives. Like what the hell? Tacos for everyone.
Tacos for everyone.
On every corner.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna start a taco stand for fun.
Is there anything you want to add to that,
yes,
Kyle?
Please.
One thing that's funny is that as someone who makes well under $15 an hour, I think it's a rash decision to make it federally that. I think you should leave it up to the states because there are many states that like small businesses could not handle that. They would like immediately shut down. Like, for example, my doggy daycare would not be able to handle that. Our prices would go up like crazy. We wouldn't get clients in. And I'm kind of the manager there, so I know how our books are, and they're very tight at the moment. So it's like we couldn't, there's no way we could do that. So I think that while it's a good idea, I just don't think practically in a lot of places it would work.
Yeah, no, I again, as a dyed-in-the-wool progressive, I definitely see that. That generally speaking, and would be my argument to most conservatives, is that where you raise the minimum wage, if you do it responsibly, you're not going to do it overnight, right? You scale that thing up over a little while. It works out. There's actually never been a place where raising the minimum wage responsibly didn't work out for the economy. Obviously, there's some changes in that, but now with automation coming down the pike, it is a huge problem because it's just going to accelerate that, right? If you're working Walmart with like doing the whole $15 minimum wage, they're like, that cool story, bro. They're going to literally automate everything. And seriously, around here, they just spent $23 million on little robots to clean the floors. And they said that's working so well. They're going to start doing stocking. They're going to start doing everything else. Like, it literally, the game is now on. It's happening exponentially, and no one's paying attention to it. So 5 years from now, $15 minimum wage will just mean that you're getting paid for a job that doesn't exist.
Oh, and Kyle, how would you feel about a jobs guarantee?
Yeah, that's even worse. I mean, the whole idea is like, okay, so what jobs are these 32 million people who currently can't get a job in our system? And like, I've changed jobs kind of frequently, so it's fairly easy to get a minimum wage job, at least in Portland. There's so many of them available right now. And so it's like, are these people, A, they don't want to do the hard work, B, they can't, C, they don't want to. So it's just the idea that the government is going to be able to manage 32 million people who are out of jobs is just, I don't know how, and give them $15 an hour while doing it. So I just think it's too much. It's too big. It's too big of a,
benefits.
Like, whereas UBI, let's just have one person write a 312 million check. That's so much easier.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think the jobs guarantee, it could be done. I mean, we've done giant infrastructure programs. We've done, the military World War II is another good example of where, the government drove us into full and good employment, because I mean, we're really close to full employment now, and it all sucks, right? Obviously that
gig economy and yeah.
Right. So the government could do it, but at the same time, it could also go horribly wrong. There's no guarantee that it would.
It's high risk,
right? It kind of is, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing if you're doing it under, like, if Elon Musk or Yang, if Yang had a jobs guarantee, right? He'd have an infrastructure bank, and he'd be doing all sorts of crazy stuff. But if Trump had this, it'd be like, cool, let's all give them shovels and have them make mounds of whatever horseshit. Who knows, right? So yeah. Again, compared to the freedom dividend, there is just no comparison.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I'm running out of time, so I think I'll let you guys finish off this conversation. It's been fun, and again, I apologize for the layman's explanations on a lot of things.
Hey.
Like I said, I'm more emotional argumenter when it comes to these things, because I just don't know a lot. So it's been awesome.
All right. Hold on. Don't leave yet. Absolutely never apologize like that again to us. Because,
okay.
There was no non-book smarts. There was no part of this conversation that didn't have you completely and totally engaged in talking about policy and economics intelligently, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, no, you're.
Thank you. I appreciate the compliment.
Thank you for your perspective, man.
Thanks for coming in, Kyle. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. You guys have a good rest of your day.
Yep. Take care, man.
Ciao.
That was great. Yeah.
Yeah, he's cool. And I didn't know that he was on the bubble like that when when you were talking about it, you're basically saying like he's working class, he's a working class conservative or whatever. It's quite different when you're working class and you're literally making what the freedom dividend would be giving you. Like, he would literally double his income the first day.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that struck me while I was listening to him is that I actually in our own moving forward group, Corey, there was somebody. No, I take that back. It was in my conservatives group. There was somebody who was saying, that he had a problem that he was like, well, I'm making $1,000 a month, and as somebody's working, my income will double. But for some reason, he felt like it was unfair that it would be so good for him, but it wouldn't be equally good for somebody who was getting, say, $2,000 a month in welfare benefits right now. And I just couldn't wrap my mind around why someone in that position who is working full time would take issue with the fact that there would be a system that would actually make it possible for them to survive.
Yeah.
If I were in his position, I would frankly be resentful towards somebody who wasn't working, was already getting twice as much as me. There's something about the bleeding heart left that I just have a really hard time understanding the way they think. It's like, dude, care about yourself and your own family sometimes. Like, you got to put yourself first in real life sometimes. It can't all just be about looking out for other people. I mean, it worked well enough for Jesus, I guess, but If I'm trying to remember who it was, but somebody pointed out like Jesus's policies would like our own defense department wouldn't survive the application of his policies. Like if you actually tried to do what he told us to do, we would all be like the crazy people wandering around homeless in sandals, like carrying
for
signs.
most of my adult life. Yep. Yeah, no, I saw a meme yesterday. Like, I'm a better Christian than basically any Trump supporter, and I'm an atheist. That is, that's me right there. Like, it's an interesting thing to see. I mean, that religion talk that's a whole other podcast, dude.
It is a whole other podcast, but it is remarkable to me. It's not just Christians, but really all religious people. It's remarkable to me how often they haven't actually read their own holy books.
Yep.
But, I mean, in Trump's defense, I don't think he's read a book in the last 30 years of any kind. So,
well, I think that's being generous. You're assuming he ever has.
Kyle said he wasn't book smart. Kyle's perfectly book smart. I'll bet you he's read 20 times as many books as Donald Trump has.
I would not take that bet. I think you're right.
He's a third his age.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. In any one year, he's read more than the entire Trump family combined for the 20 or 30 years.
I'll take the bet. Yeah.
Yep. That's legit. So what else wanted, with the I mean, I think we would just be reiterating, like, I think that, like, thinking about Kyle on the first day, maybe that's something we should do, right? Like freedom dividend first month. What does that look like? Right. One of the ladies from the Moving Forward group, Annette was talking about, she's on disability and her husband is basically, taking care of her full time. And this would like dramatically change their lives, right? Like this would be a huge thing. And for somebody like Kyle, he could literally just stop doing what he's doing right now and start his business and be living the same life, but start increasing his own income, looking after other people's dogs and striking out on his own and doing what he wants to do if he wanted to, right?
I don't know if you'd be able to start on day one. It sounds like, I mean, Portland is a fairly expensive area, which is probably why he's got like 4 roommates in his 1-bedroom apartment.
That's true.
But I think what he would do is he'd keep doing the job, which he seems like a fairly happy guy,
Oh, yeah.
And he likes dogs. I love that he's a dog lover. I'm a dog lover, so like he's doing something that he's happy with. He's young. He can do the roommates thing. They probably get together and smoke a bowl together at night or whatever. It's not, there are worse ways to live. So if I were him, probably what I'd do is I'd keep that gig that I like, taking care of dogs. I'd sock away my UBI money every month until I had a down payment on a rural property out in a cheaper part of Oregon.
Yeah.
I'd buy that and I'd start taking care of people's dogs. And he could do that within a couple of years, no problem.
That makes more sense.
Like, even if his day-to-day life was insufferable, which I don't think it is, but even if it were, just knowing that there was an out, that he had a long-term plan and that he wouldn't be stuck doing that for the rest of his life would make such an enormous difference in his life.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, I would totally drive to Portland and drop my dogs off for the day just for the hell of it. That'd be really cool.
Well, like I said, it'd be worth it. It would be worth it for him to come down to NorCal and look after our dog.
Well, maybe when we
a whole month. I mean,
right? Yeah, when we take the Moving Forward podcast on tour, we could just make sure we stop in Portland and be like, "What's up?" Man, could you imagine doing this podcast in a world with the freedom dividend in it?
What would we talk about?
The freedom. We would just tour the country talking about how people's lives are being changed by the freedom dividend. And never mind, like we've got iterations of the Moving Forward podcast planned for after Yang's policies, but screw that. We could just do that for over and over and over again. I think it'd be fun.
Well, yeah, and I mean, after this one, we're going to do another policy episode, and but Yang still has a bajillion policies we haven't gone through.
Yeah.
But what's great about it is that, as you said, Corey, it's like the freedom dividend is like a superpower. It's like an upgrade. Every other policy gets better when you put the freedom dividend upgrade on it.
Yep.
And part of what I loved is that a lot of the conservative arguments that I've made about voting with your feet and states' rights and stuff like that, you thought about it and you're like, dude, with the freedom dividend, that stuff would actually work because people would be able to move. They would be able to quit their job if they didn't like it, right? And so for those of us who believe in, by the way, we talk a lot about the benefits of capitalism for the economy. The one thing that's really wonderful, just on a purely like emotional level, and we're emotional beings, humans are.
What? No.
The one thing that's wonderful on an emotional level about capitalism is as long as you have enough money, it doesn't have to be a lot, as long as
Yep.
you have enough money, you actually have freedom. You have freedom, right? You're not, if you're, it doesn't matter whether you're, working under the slave master of your boss, or if you're working under the slave master of the government, in the case of communism, which is also your boss. You don't have freedom. In capitalism, with your own resources, your ability to own your own capital is the only way that human beings have ever truly been free. And what's wonderful about Yang is it's making it possible for everybody to enjoy that freedom that you and I have enjoyed, Corey. And that's a future. It's like, I mean, I say I'm not a bleeding heart, but I'm also not like a total asshole either. Like obviously I'd prefer to live in a world where everybody was happy. It's just that I genuinely believe that lowering the ceiling, which is kind of what socialism does, again, taking all your caveats about semantics into consideration, but when people are talking about real socialism, they're talking about lowering the ceiling. Sure, they might raise the floor a little bit, but we don't want to lower the ceiling. We want to raise the floor and keep the ceiling high. That's the ideal, and that's what's so great about Yang's policies, is it does just that.
Yeah, I agree. Even though let's face facts, the VAT tax will actually lower the ceiling in a very real way, in a way that I am entirely unsympathetic about. But yeah, no, that's really. And I think that
I actually don't think it would.
Well, and you might be right, because with the economic stimulus of all of that money, because all of it's going to end up in the pockets of rich people eventually anyway. You really might be right. Like,
well, I don't know about all of it, but like enough of it.
You know what I mean, though, right? Like, yeah.
Well, okay. One way to think about it is like you've got a pie, right? The pie is like GDP as it is right now, right?
Sure.
And so you can think of it in kind of the Marxist framework, which is like oppressor and oppressed, and like we have to redistribute the pie, and that's one way of looking at it. Another way you can look at it is, hey, let's grow the pie. And if the pie gets bigger, right, then it's possible for people who have less to have more without having to take it away. And by the way, when I'm talking about lowering the ceiling, I'm not talking about the astronomically wealthy. I mean, if that ceiling goes down a little bit naturally in a way that isn't taking freedom from people, but it just sort of works out that way in the game of capitalism, I'm all for that. That's fine.
Oh, hold on. Let me.
Like, I don't want to lower the ceiling of the middle class. I don't want to see the middle class disappear, which is. And I'm sure you'll admit this, every time that real socialism has been tried anywhere, that's exactly what happened.
100%. No, this is the thing. To anybody, if you want to share this with somebody who's like, I'm assuming a kid, or someone who's like, no, real socialism is going to work. Find me one example where an actual socialist system is working, and I will wait until the end of time. Right?
They can find social democracies, but
they're different. This is the thing. When
exactly.
When people talk about democratic socialism, I'm from Canada. Hello, that's us, right? It is first and foremost a capitalist system where we started finding ways to raise the floor, which is, but frankly, when people talk about socialism now, that's what they're saying, right? So like they mean democratic socialism. And of course, there's some, we can find the weirdos that are like, no, down with capitalism. I'm like, yeah, okay, good talk. That's not really going to work out. That's like Norway, Finland, Canada, Switzerland.
Social democracy, not democratic socialism. Those are different too. Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah. I mean, Germany here is a social democracy.
Okay. I don't see the difference or really care.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can explain it really quickly if you want. Okay. Like, democratic socialism is socialism achieved via democratic means, but it still believes in total like.
Okay, no. In this context, nobody calling themselves a democratic socialist believes that. That's the problem.
Maybe some of them might. Some of them might, and some of them might not.
AOC doesn't. Bernie Sanders doesn't. Nobody in Canada does. Nobody in Finland does.
They should. So, social democracy is different. So it's a synonym for social liberalism, and social liberalism was actually invented as an alternative to socialism.
Okay.
Social liberalism is basically what you just described. It's the idea that you maintain the benefits of capitalism, but you create some kind of a social safety net.
Right.
Thing. That's social liberalism. I'm a classical liberal, which is to the right of social liberal. Social liberal would be center left, and socialism, actual socialism, whether democratic or otherwise, would be the true hard left.
And really, this is the thing. So I get like in the textbook, I can absolutely see that democratic socialism would be, hey, we've got a totally democratic process, but where basically the means of production are mostly in the hands of government, right?
Or entirely, yeah.
Right. Well, sure, right. No democratic socialist in America is talking about that. Not really. Right? That's not what they're saying.
Well, then they're making the same problem as the people you complain about on the right who are using the word.
100%. That's exactly my point, right? Like, this is the dumbest, and I've been saying this forever. Like, using the term socialism in your moniker whatsoever is the dumbest branding since the invention of the dumbest branding ever, right? It's not good. You're not actually talking about, you're basically giving the right, you're ceding to them this scare tactic argument that is going to freak people out and make people think that, people that are Democrats want to turn this into communist China. And none of them do, right? But at the same time, it gives people an opening to think that.
In all fairness, I don't believe that AOC or Bernie Sanders wants communist China either.
Right.
You can find clips of Bernie Sanders talking very positively about actual communist societies. Like, I mean, he is definitely more sympathetic to that perspective.
I agree.
And I'm comfortable with, right?
Yeah.
I think he might be dog whistling to people who are to his left in the same way that Trump dog whistled to, neo-Nazis and stuff. Like, I don't think Trump is really a neo-Nazi, but I think that he also is an awful enough person that he has no problem dog whistling.
Yeah. I don't think he's smart enough to be a neo-Nazi. And I'm not even kidding. Like, I don't think he understands what it means.
I don't think he's smart enough to have any kind of a genuine ideological
100%.
Yeah.
He's
other than just like,
being a racist.
Love me, I'm Trump, I'm the best.
Yep, nailed it. That's exactly it. He's stuck at age 5. He just wants his mom to love him and will do whatever the fuck it takes to make it happen. That's it. And yeah, so anyway, that.
So what did you think about, I guess, I don't know if you saw this story, but I guess Bernie Sanders came out with like a addendum or amendment to his education policy recently. Came out pretty hard against charter schools and very much in favor of increased federal funding for public schools. Did you read about that?
Yeah. So I didn't read about that. We're having a huge situation here with charter schools, and it's basically where the Republicans are defunding public schools and putting all the money into charter schools that are not overseen. So they're not actually even really good unless you're in a rich area. And so they're basically funneling all of the rich kids into these charter schools, and the other schools are suffering hardcore. So, I would love to see, in an idyllic world, I would love to see charter schools where they were, funded out the wazoo, and they were all like Elon Musk, made kind of like a Montessori thing that is like an amazing new version of education. If that was available to literally everybody from every class strata, I'd be all for it. But that's not how it's playing out. So I would probably have to side with them on it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, in the current context, charter schools bother me too, but I'm probably from a different reason. But yeah, no, I don't like the idea of taking taxpayer money and then putting it into, in some cases, for profit. It's essentially corporate welfare.
Yep, that's a good way to put it.
For-profit charter schools, and in the case of nonprofit charter schools, I mean, Milton Friedman was for that, and I think his reasoning was sound at the time. His idea was that he wanted to get out of this position where people are basically trapped in just whatever public school is in their area, and he wanted to give people choice. I understood where he was coming from with that, but as we talked about before, I'll say it again, since education's in the news again. One thing I love about the UBI is, as we grow it, if we get to the point where the UBI is $2,000 or $3,000 a month, then you have this amazing thing where you can actually start to give people choice, real choice, not just you pick between this charter school, which all taxpayer money goes into whether you want to or not, or through this public school, which all taxpayer money goes into whether you wanted to or not. Yeah. Instead, you have this option of like, dude, you can like send your kid to public school, or you can, get a larger UBI and use that money to educate them through some other means in the private market. That to me makes more sense, because that's putting the choice in the hands of the parents, not just in where the kid goes, which exists now, but actually in terms of how they spend their own money. Unless it's their own UBI money, unless it's their own on the line, they're not making a real choice, because of course people are often going to choose the free choice, even if it's an inferior one. Right. But if you think that it's like, all right, it's going to cost you something, it's not out of pocket because it's coming out of your massive UBI, but or you can keep the money and send them to a private school, then you've got real competition going on. And I honestly believe that public schools would be better under the circumstances.
I think that you might be right. It's interesting too. Like, if we can imagine a child addition to the UBI, but that is flexible with how you're managing to do your schooling. And obviously there would have to be checks to make sure that, like if you're homeschooling, for example, you still need to pass grades all the time. I mean, Michelle and I are talking about doing homeschooling, right? Like I'm home a lot, busy as freaking hell at the moment, but like, I'm home a lot.
For your fur babies?
Yeah, right. Yeah. We teach them how to sleep. They're super good.
We did take our Lhasa Apso to puppy kindergarten, and our Australian Shepherd got private sheep herding lessons.
That's awesome.
Mario, yeah.
That's awesome. You guys
are talking about having kids, right? For real?
Yeah. I think I'm dramatically too old, but she doesn't pay attention to me. So.
How old are you, Corey?
I turned 44 yesterday.
Jesus, you look great, dude.
Thanks, buddy. It's the shirt. Like that. Once you're wearing a Nintendo shirt at 44, it's like whatever. What do you get?
You've got the hipster thing going on. Sweet.
Yeah. No, that was my goal at 30. Like, be a 44-year-old hipster.
So should we call this one and
yes.
gear up for a policy episode?
We should. I want to say thanks to Kyle again. Great booking, Rio. And quite frankly, I'd like to have him on again as the primaries go through. Thank you to everyone who is engaging in the Moving Forward podcast group. If you're not in that, we're on Facebook. You can search for Moving Forward podcast group and get in there and join the conversation. The conversation is really, really good, right? And there's stupid memes like Andre Yangers our taco.
And we're doing live Q&As for people on Facebook there, for people who are members of the group now too. So.
Yes, which actually they end up being wide ranging conversations just with us and the whole team. Yeah, I'm loving this, man. This is like I do too many things at once. That is a known thing that I do. This is one of my favorite things instantaneously. Like,
I've got like 20 projects that I'm producing right now. So
right.
Yeah, this is the one that I was talking about over lunch. We were having our bratwurst. You're in downtown Garmisch-Partenkirchen earlier today.
Yes, there it is.
My wife and my mother-in-law and I spent like an hour talking about this podcast because it really is super inspiring. I think my favorite thing about it, my wife pointed out, she's like, I'm having a brownout right now. I'm intentionally avoiding politics in the news. It's too stressful. I don't want to deal with it, And I said, what's so wonderful about our podcast is that it's actually about like trying to get away from the partisan drama and the toxic fighting, and frankly, the infighting in both parties too. Like, it's just, the alt-right is fighting with, regular right-wingers like me, and then you've got, like the Bernie bros fighting with like the Biden status Joe guys, and like it's just
the noisy.
Chill out. 100%. Can we please just come together with some reasonable compromises based on math and vote for Andrew Yang, please?
Show over, because yes, that's it. Please do that. Math and reason. All right, I'm hitting the button.